Hi everyone, I wanted to share this with you today. This is a gift that was given to me by my family, and this is a picture and dog tags, medals from my grandfather. His picture is down here. You can see him right there. It's my grandfather, Fred Podmore. And he served in the Welsh Guards during World War II. And today is Remembrance Day. And so I wanted to just take a moment to reflect a bit on why I think we need to continue celebrating Remembrance Day and why it's so important. My grandfather, when he was in the Welsh Guards, he was in a tank regiment, and he became, best friends with the people in his tank. And he was a gunner. He would normally have gone into the tank first, and very small, close quarters, and then the others would come in. But on this particular day, he was sent to run a message, and he had to bring it, deliver that message, and then come back. And as he's coming back, his friends were already in the tank, and it was hit with a shell and completely destroyed the tank. The other men died, and my grandfather had shrapnel in his leg, and that ended the war for him. He went back and finished the rest of the war back in England, and went to the hospital and then went home. That story's been told in my family, and I think it's important to remember our stories and our connections as well, to remember that these are, there are people that are close to us that that went through really devastating and difficult times, and to remember what they gave for their country and for fighting against oppression, really. So the other thing I wanted to point out on here is this telegram. This telegram here, I don't know if you can see that very well, but this telegram is what my grandfather received when my mom was born, because he wasn't there, and it just says, let me see if I can read it here. Yeah, it just says July 1st. My mom was born on July 1st. A daughter, both well, Dorothy. That's my grandma's name. So no name even communicated for the baby necessarily. Maybe they'd already decided on Anne, but that's all he got. He just got a telegram saying we're both well. I think remembering what actual people did in the wars, and remembering that the reality of war around the world. Some people really balk at thinking about Remembrance Day, and because I think some people think that this is like a glorification of war, and it's really not. For me, it's a time to reflect, and the importance of remembering is actually so that we remember that we don't want to go there again, actually. Right? We remember it in order to look ahead in hope of a time where those kinds of conflicts should come to an end. And we know that those conflicts continue around the world, and human beings are often faced with the difficult choices around, do we enter into this kind of conflict when we can't see other ways of doing it? So in World War II, for instance, it actually took quite a while for England and then also the United States to enter into the war. There's all kinds of political reasons for that. But I also think that nobody wants to send their sons and daughters into that kind of fight. Some would say they waited too long when you could see what was happening in Nazi Germany. Like, a totalitarian regime needed to be stood up to, right? And what do we do when that happens? I really think that our calling is actually to resist totalitarian regimes. Those should not happen in our world. And so I think we need to remember that people did fight so that that regime could be stopped, that democracies could exist and continue. That, to me, is really important to remember. It's also really important to remember that nobody actually wants to go into war. There's a note, my sister put together this book that has a whole bunch of information about my grandfather, and there's a note just on the first page saying that he didn't talk much about his experience in active duty. And I think that's true of lots of soldiers, because it was horrific. You know, no one wants to go through that and relive it. And we know that soldiers come back with all kinds of issues like post-traumatic stress disorder, and we don't want anyone to go through that. And war is a terrible thing. And so for some of us, we might want to say, well, let's not have a day to raise that up. But actually, Remembrance Day, for me, is not a day to raise up war. It's a day to remember it. Let's never forget. Let's never forget, so that we have the opportunity to try to not do this again. It's actually quite similar to other things that we've experienced in our past as people, where we actually need to remember challenging times, trauma, difficulty, so that we learn and move forward. The same would go for residential schools with Indigenous peoples. We need to remember what happened, acknowledge what happened, and move toward a future. It's not about glorifying war. We can be thankful for what was fought for. We can be thankful for sacrifices that were made that allow us to have freedoms in our lives. We can be thankful for those things, and at the same time acknowledge that they went through terrible things, and that if we could have had a different way of doing it, we would have loved to have not had wars. We would love to not have war today. We would love to not have the need for military today, that we're thankful for the sacrifice that people in the military make to protect and defend and to try to work towards peace, even though as human beings we have such limited capacity to bring about earthly peace. And this is why we put our hope ultimately in God and not in things like political or military might. We put our hope in God alone, we pray to God, and we give thanks today. So today is a day to remember those great wars that were fought, to give thanks and to honor those who serve in the military, but also to acknowledge that we look ahead to a time when those things are not going to be part of our human existence. We look forward to a time when peace will reign. So for me, these are all the things that come up for Remembrance Day. And so I'll invite you today to think about some of this and to pray. Take a moment to reflect on maybe some of your own stories that you have about people in your family or in your life or in your background. I never actually got to meet my grandfather. He passed away before I was born, but the stories have been passed down, and I often on Remembrance Day take a moment to think about him and the impact that he had on my family and on the people around him. Thanks for watching today.